Oh, this is wonderful. You came all the way from London, England for the media event reunion. That's wonderful. What brought you here?
You did. Definitely. And my arms are very tired, Fred. All that flying.
That can really do it. Well, like others, that have been talked with on Victory Television, you did not start out to be an actress. Your main interest was art. What changed that?
My main interest or my main study, I was not very clever at school, being very dyslexic, but my main subject was art. And I got into art school, and there was an art student friend who was taking photographs. He was studying photography, and he said, can I take a picture of you? I said, if you want to. So he did, and then he asked my mum if he could use the picture and send it off to David Bailey, who's a very big fashion photographer in the 60s, and that's what he did. And it won my mush, my face, won the competition, which is very odd. But that set me on the road to acting via the modelling. I did quite a lot of modelling for Vogue and for various things, and via that and my modelling agency, I got castings, extra castings. I worked as an extra on Casino Royale, the original one, which is before your time, Fred.
No, I'm supposed to be a Bond fan, but I loved that Casino Royale. It was
good,
great.
wasn't it?
But and you've done other things, of course, naturally, and you've been called the Queen of Fantasy. I guess largely through Hammer films, Captain Kronos, which I think is very good.
It's a good film.
Yes, and how did you like doing those?
Oh, I did. Listen. It did and has become my passion. The work is absolutely my passion. I enjoyed them thoroughly. The first sort of foray after the extra work was I did a Western actually with Richard Widmark. I played his daughter. I played a Mexican-American girl, and Richard Widmark and Cesar Romero was my grandfather, and I played the daughter. So that was my first kind of big foray into film, and that was with Paramount Films. And then from there, I was still doing a little bit of modelling, and I got a big campaign in England for, it was a man's dark rum. So they wanted somebody a bit sort of sassy and darkish looking. And so I did the poster, which I was wearing a wetsuit, a diving suit, and I was wet. I was had a bucket of water thrown over me, basically, and I have a knife strapped to my thigh. And Sir James Carreras at Hammer saw the big poster, the billboard, and from that I had a contract actually for Hammer, and I did the 2 Hammer films, and then from there I was lucky enough to work with Brian Clements on the Captain Kronos, and he'd written the screenplay for Sinbad, so that was my start. A wonderful start too. I was so lucky. I worked with some amazing people.
Well, you've been called one of the very top James Bond villainesses. And sadly, they don't always survive through the film.
I don't.
Unless Bond convinces them to change their way. But now, what I thought was interesting, you were in there with Richard Kiel.
Yes.
And
lovely.
You both, and he had the role of Jaws. And what is interesting to me is you're both strong Christians.
Yes.
And how did you like working with Richard and Roger Moore?
Oh, I couldn't have had 2 more beautiful people and just wonderful characters. They're both so different. Roger is very twinkly, and he has a way with words. He's quite a wordsmith, and he'd do one-liners before you'd go on and do a take. And for me, that was actually, it was good because I liked that, because it kind of gives you a bit of momentum to work with. And I remember Lewis Gilbert, the wonderful director who directed Spy, said, "Have you thought about your character?" I said, "Oh, yes. Oh, no, I've thought about her. I'm going to have fun with her. You know, I'm an assassin. That's what I am. And I'm going to have fun." And I think she's about one of the, apparently she's one of the only ladies that doesn't sleep with James Bond, which I quite like.
What I like about the film is one of the most famous scenes in a Roger Moore film and in all the Bond films was when you're in the helicopter and you're going after Bond and he sees you and you see him and you do something totally unexpected that was on your own.
I did. We had a second unit director, because Lewis was directing the main scenes with Roger and Barbara Bach. And they said, "Oh, Caroline, we need to do some pickup shots. You need to go in the helicopter and we'll have the cameraman with you and the crew and then just, you know, do something." So I thought, okay. So that's what I did. I did something.
And that was?
I gave a little wink and a little wave.
Would you like to demonstrate?
Oh, no, I'm an old girl, but let me think. Now let's think for her. Oh, I'm doing it the wrong eye. Bond.
And Bond actually acted as though he was completely surprised, and he nodded.
He was great. Roger was wonderful. And Richard, I didn't have any scenes with Richard Keel during the filmmaking, but we did all the European publicity, and we also did the New York, Richard and I, and the main baddie, Kurt Jürgens, the German actor. So we did all the publicity, and we had a hoot. We went everywhere. Cubby hired private planes, Cubby Broccoli, the producer, and we went just everywhere. And it was just beautiful, first class. We worked hard. You know, the publicity tour, it's like a huge junket of press. But it was lovely because we had each other to work with, and he had his wife, Diane. You know, it was just joyful. It was lovely.
Well, now, you have a special affection for the Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
I do.
And in fact, there's a couple of things that I think are very interesting. One, you worked with a future Doctor Who.
I did. I worked with Tom Baker.
Right.
And the reason, well, one of the reasons, I mean, Tom is a fabulous actor. And I had a little look at it yesterday on the screen at your show. And I hate to see myself, but I saw Tom, and I see how good he was, and why he was chosen. The producers of Doctor Who were looking for somebody new, and they saw Sinbad, and that's our boy. So he did it for, you would know how many series, I don't know. He did a lot of series.
Well, what's interesting to me is I've run into Doctor Who fans who really, we've had 12 doctors, and they go back and say they prefer the fourth one. But now, aren't you on a special board related to this film?
Actually, I am. I have the great honor to be asked to be a trustee of the Ray Harryhausen Foundation, which is a foundation to help sponsor young people in the film industry, and along with his, I say special effects. His was special effects, but his was a one-off because he did stop motion photography, and he did all his creatures. He was a one-man band when he did his creatures. He made them. His process was, the actors did the live action first. Am I going too deep? Okay, and I think we're nearly winding up, actually, but we can go on for 5 minutes more if that's all right. Sorry, Fred. I've forgotten where I was, but basically it is a wonderful foundation, and I'm a huge fan, and I was a dear friend of Ray's, and his daughter is a good friend of my stepdaughter, so I'm very much on board, and it's a charity, and it does such good stuff, you know, it really does. And it's Ray Harryhausen, who's like the godfather of special effects.
Well, now, One thing I'm kind of interested in is the fact that we both know Luciana Paluzzi.
Oh, yes.
And she once said that her career would have been advanced if she had stayed either in Italy and concentrated, or if she had come to the United States and just given up Italy, and consequently she's been so spread out. Have you ever had that feeling, England and United States?
I was offered twice a chance. Cubby Broccoli, when we'd finished The Spy, he said, I think it's your time to come over. How old was I? I was about 27, and I'd got a few films under my belt by then, and I'd learnt more. I'd learnt more. And he said, now's the time. I can introduce you to people, then you're on your own. And he said, I really think you should do it. And I thought about it, and I had my parents. My parents were elderly, getting older, and that was my time to be with them. So I chose not to. And then later in the 80s, I was offered by an American casting director to come over and to work on, I think it was The Bold and the Beautiful, but I'm not sure. It's one of the soapy things. I chose not to. My heart always comes first. My head's a bit daft, but my heart is true. So, hey.
That's
I'm a heart girl.
That's beautiful about you. I think it's great with the attitude that you have, and you're a mother first, very much.
I am totally
And
a mother.
I realized when I asked that, technically speaking, that I understood it. One last thing, out of curiosity, didn't mention it. Should have mentioned it at the very beginning. You're the only actress I've ever known who was born across the street from a palace.
I actually was. My mum, I was born opposite Windsor Castle. I was, bang opposite Windsor Castle. I won't say the year, but I'm sure people have got hey, it doesn't really matter, does it? But I was born there, and Mum said, yes, she said it was quite tough. She said, but I had the beautiful view to look at. So, and then, I came into the world, so that's where I was born. I didn't live in Windsor. But no.
You should have,
Didn't
definitely.
quite make the castle.
Listen, I want to thank you very much, and to say that it's always a delight to talk with you, and to have you here in the Roanoke Valley, and we definitely want you back.
Oh, I would love to. In a heartbeat, I would be back. And you and your beautiful wife, Caroline, are such gracious hosts and hostesses. You always make me feel very welcome, and you make me smile a lot too. So I hope this interview is serious enough. But I love him. I do. I love him. Not in the biblical sense.
Love you too.
Thank you.
All righty.